everyone, welcome back to another episode of Ult In Ten, and today with me I have someone really well known lately for his Amumu and Alistair jungle, which we'll be seeing both of in this episode. It's Lautemortis from Legion, who is formerly known as Reflex. Oh, that's really easy to say. It's Lautemortis. Why don't you say hi and introduce yourself?
Okay, my name's Lautemortis. I'm from Team Legion. You might know us from our MLG Providence trip where we legitimately beat CLG because someone fell asleep and we got Lapaka. Today I'm going to be playing Amumu and then a little bit of Alistar later. I figure I'd stick with what I'm good at so I don't mess it up too badly.
Alright, well, why don't you start things off by telling us about your history in gaming, and then maybe go towards competitive gaming.
Okay, well, I used to play Halo a lot for Xbox. I was really good at that. I think that was probably the game I was the best at ever, but I never actually went to MLG or anything. But after that, I played StarCraft Online, and my record was like 1 in 100 or something. So I'm pretty good at video games.
Pretty good at StarCraft.
I excel against Koreans.
All right. Well, then, what about League? What when did you get started with League, and how did that get going?
All my real life friends played it, and I'm pretty cheap. So when they told me it was free to play, I was like, why the hell not? And it continued to be free, and I continued to have no money. So we were just like a match made in heaven.
And when did you actually start?
Right after beta ended, so that was probably like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago.
Okay,
Something
and then
that vague boundary.
how did you get into Legion? How does that story begin?
Me and my friend Prolly, who's our AP mid player and our support player, we always played together. We never took it seriously. For a while, we were on top of like the 3v3 bracket. We were just playing around, and then we're like, we have good elos. We're decent players. We should try and get a team together. So we recruited a couple of other people. We caught a break when CLG admitted to using a ringer for one of their games and went to MLG Providence. And then from there, we were able to scrim a lot against Dignitas, who we became pretty good friends with. And, we held our own in all the scrims we played against Dignitas. And even when we played against TSM in the tournament, who ended up winning, I feel like we should have won our games. We were just inexperienced, but we definitely had leads in all of our games. So we were like, maybe we should keep trying this. And we've added a couple people since then, like Cruiser, the feeder, and
Yeah, he's pretty bad right here.
a couple other people, Demon Lol, and then we sub in Freaker for support a lot. But yeah, so we've just been playing, cohesively as a team for, a couple months now, and, it's starting to show recently, that all our roster changes were for the better in the long term.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I had the pleasure of casting you guys versus Dignitas this past weekend in the Curse Invitational, and you guys did really well against them. And I kind of want to talk about, how did you get started in jungling? Like, how did that become what you wanted to do, for your team?
Well, I played right when the game got out of beta or whatever, so like the only viable jungler was Warwick, and so I just played Warwick like every single game. I would just play him and play him and play him, and then eventually, this is when like XP and lanes like had a huge disparity. Like if you jungled and you had a solo top, like that solo top would be like 3 levels higher than the duo they'd be going against. So it's like a huge advantage to having a jungler, and I just always like that, even if I do bad, I can pretend I helped the team just by not being in the lane. And so I just did that a ton, and then I ended up, killing enough creeps that my team saw, my merit. I killed Dragon really well.
Okay, well, being a Dragon Slayer is really important, in this culture, and I kind of want to, since we're on this Amumu game, we'll be going to an Alistar one after this. Can you kind of explain these recent changes to Amumu, what makes him so good in the jungle now? I mean, you didn't see him pretty much ever, 3-4 weeks ago, but now you're starting to see him pretty much often, or really often.
I was one of the few players who actually still played Amumu before the buff. So when he got buffed, I was jumping for joy because he's one of my favorite champions. He was basically who I mained when I was learning the game. What makes him so good is when you used to be able to abuse a Mumu ult being down, like if you would gank a lane and you would use his ult, the other team could almost instantly just take Dragon, force it the next time they spawn, and a Mumu was useless. But with his new ult cooldown, you only have to delay Dragon for like 15 seconds before Mumu has his ult back up if you end up getting a kill in the gank and they come straight to Dragon. So his ult cooldown was really beneficial. I can't even remember what else they changed.
I believe they buffed his magic resist per level as well.
Oh yeah, that buff. And obviously that's just gonna help any tank.
Right, and can you kind of talk about what exactly, like, what masteries and runes you run on Amumu?
They're pretty standard. I run Armor Quints and Armor Seals. Because with his E, which reduces a set amount of damage to him, and Indomitable in the defense tree, you can start taking 0 damage to creeps at like level 3 or something from jungle creeps. And then I just run Magic Pen Reds because he actually does a lot of damage if you have the right rune set up. And then Magic Resist per level Glyphs, just because those are pretty standard on any jungler. You are basically never going to have any big burst from magic damage until level 6 or 7, which is when they start to switch over.
Right, and can you kind of talk about exactly like the mindset when you jungle, because it's really important, at least in solo queue and even in competitive games, Squeak, that you really know what you're doing in the jungle. Like, what do you do? Like, what do you think makes you better than other junglers? Like anything special?
I gank a lot, and when I see people ward, I'm always thinking how I can get around the ward. Like, I don't give up a lane just because it's warded. I always I'll pink a bush to get to a different bush without them knowing I'm there. It's all, I don't know, I like to think there's a lot of mind game going on in the jungle, and they never know where I'm at, and I try and do unpredictable routes and get red at different times so they can't counter jungle. It's just a lot of tiny things, but I think I do a lot of them pretty well, and that makes me excel a little bit better than some of the other junglers.
And speaking of counter jungling, what's your take on aggressive counter jungling and counter ganking?
I think against the Mumu, it's basically a must. If you let him get through the jungle, he's one of the fastest farmers, one of the fastest, anything. But you can stop a lot of counter jungling just by warding correctly. If you have a ward to your jungle, unless they have like a wall hopper like Sejuani, which they won't have Sejuani, they have to worry about your jungle getting invaded. If you play Shyvana, it's basically a must. Like, you can farm your own jungle, but you can farm their jungle like so much better than anybody else.
So do you actively counter jungle with Amumu?
Not if they're alive. He doesn't have a very good escape. All his moves like take you to an enemy. I guess his bandage takes you to an enemy. So it's not particularly good at escaping. Like, I don't know.
Well, we did just see recently, or a couple minutes ago, that you were stealing the enemy red buff, and when you were caught by, I believe it was Riven and Shyvana. Actually, no, Riven's not in this game. Sorry, I believe it was Urgot and Shyvana. No, it was Riven and Shyvana. You actually just vanish toss over that wall onto the dragon and ended up escaping through that way.
Yeah, that's a really strong route with the Mumu. It's through Dragon and Barons. I love that escape because, no one else can really follow you. Even if they flash the wall, you've gotten, like, flash plus a little bit extra distance already. But and you have to know when the creeps are up. If the creeps weren't up then, obviously, you're not going to have very much success. So, it's hard to do it in the enemy jungle because I never know when their creeps are alive or whatnot.
Do you feel that Amumu fills only like a certain niche in a team comp, for instance, like an AoE kind of team comp, or can he kind of fit into anything?
He's not a particularly good split pusher, but I think any team comp that relies on team fighting to have victories, other than like a split comp, I don't think you have to have AoE to run Amumu. I think you just have to have a team that can protect him early. Like, Maokai counters AoE teams, but I don't think Maokai counters Amumu. Because I don't think you need to run an Amumu with it, or an AoE comp with an Amumu. I think it excels with Amumu, but like, if they ban out some AoE, I don't think it's a reason not to pick Amumu.
All right, now we're back, and this is actually the Alistair game that you wanted to show, and you wanted to talk about something right here, so I'll let you go ahead and do that.
Okay, well, I've never seen anyone talk about this. This may or may not be common knowledge, but when Mana Golem's walking back, you can actually walk in front of its path for so long that it deflects to the top of the lane instead of to the left, because it thinks it's going mid through the top is faster, and by doing that, you can basically kill a Mana Golem by yourself without having to use Smite.
Okay, well, yeah, we had to start the replay early because he wanted to describe that for you guys. But let's talk about let's talk about Alistair versus Amumu in terms of jungling. Like, you know, where does one excel over the other, and how's the playstyle different? Because these are your two most played junglers, I believe.
Okay, obviously Amumu is basically made around team comps, and Alistar is made for early game ganking, basically. You play him like a support for a majority of the game. I actually end up building in DPS later, but like the DPS doesn't really shine on him until you get a lot of items. So the difference between the two is definitely the gank ability for Alistar is a lot higher than it is for Amumu. And then it's really hard to invade Alistar early because he probably does one of the most damages of any jungler, and with the most disrupt probably early. So I think Alistar is almost always a safe pick for jungle, unless they have like a Morgana mid, but Morgana's just a lane champion.
Yeah, I remember talking about this during the cast when you were playing him, and Crimson and I were mentioning, you know, he's one of those junglers where if you don't snowball early, he kind of really falls off. Do you agree with that?
I think if you don't snowball with him early, then you're playing him wrong. But I don't think he falls off. I think endgame, honestly, Alistar is my favorite champion to play endgame because his ultimate is ridiculously strong. Like, at max rank, it's 70% reduced damage for 7 seconds. If you build straight damage, you can kill someone in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, I believe during that same cast, you actually ended up soloing I'm a Cutie Pie on Corki with your Alistair because you had a Triforce and a Yomu's built on him. And can you kind of talk about, I guess, well, you said that playing Alistair, you don't really have to have a certain team comp, but we see here, you know, having a Sona as a support and having an Alistair in the jungle, it kind of makes it so you lack a lot of DPS, you know, not having like a Nocturne in the jungle or something like that. Does your like solo lanes really have to depend on Alistair? Or sorry, does solo lanes really have to be like really high DPS kind of champions?
No, my runes on Alistar are like ridiculously damaged. So like, my goal when I gank with Alistar is basically
That trap death.
is basically to be like the main damager. Like I don't need a gank lane that has a lot of CC, but if I have a lane that ganks a lot of CC, obviously that's gonna make ganking like applicable in any situation. But I feel like the damage your lane deals doesn't make it ungankable. It just makes it easier to gank if obviously they do have damage.
Right, and actually, okay, this is something I'm really curious about. Actually, just for myself, is what do you focus on in a jungle in terms of lanes? You know, I always hear a lot of different things. You know, kind of some people tend to just kind of gank middle and top and leave bottom alone, let them just farm. Some people like to stick to middle and bottom. Like, what do you kind of do? Does it really just depend on the game, or what?
It depends on where I know wards are at, basically. Top and mid don't start with wards, bottom does. So if I'm trying for an early gank, I'm going to go top or mid, as you just saw with that Alistar gank. I know they don't have wards up, so it's pretty safe. I know I'm not going to be wasting my time. Worst case scenario, I'm going to make them miss some farm, and I'm going to make them use some pots. Well, if you go bottom, if they have a ward in the right place, they can just completely bait you, you know. They can make you waste your time. So early game, before pink wards are a factor, I don't think that ganking bottom is the strongest lane to gank. I definitely prefer to gank top or mid.
Okay, and I kind of want to go to a community question real quick, and we already talked about pretty much two, I'm assuming, of this, is what are your top 3 favorite junglers at the moment? And I'm assuming Amumu and Alistar are 2 of those 3.
Yeah, well, Alistar's definitely the most fun to play endgame, and in his early games, awesome too. And a Mumu, who doesn't like just having to hit R and win the game? And then my third favorite would be Lee Sin, and that's just because you get to jump to shit. And it's like the only champion I like to buy wards on because then I get to use them to do fun stuff as opposed to just give vision.
Well, how do you actually feel about Nautilus jungle? I'm curious on your takes on that because we see I Will Dominate playing a lot of them.
Yeah, I Will Dominate plays almost exclusively Nautilus now. Um, Honestly, I think he's pretty good, but I'm not very good with him. So I try and stay away from him. Whenever I play him, we tend to lose. I like to blame other people for that, but a little part of it might be me. But
Okay.
I think he's a good jungler overall. I mean, he starts with like 16 armor, so if you have like a smart jungler, you can invade him. And like, if you run a Nautilus, you can run like a Mumu super easy. You don't have to worry about your early game being affected. So like, I wouldn't pick a Nautilus when there's an Amumu. This is my opinion, but I don't think it's smart to pick Nautilus when there's an Amumu up, because it's not a counter, but like you've just given Amumu basically free reign over his own jungle.
Right, and I kind of want to talk about a little bit about helping out lower yellow kind of junglers is when you kind of get shut down to each lane because there's wards everywhere and you can't really afford to buy a lot of pink wards or oracles. What do you typically do? Do you kind of just try to farm that jungle, just get some GP5 rolling?
I love GP10s on junglers. They're almost always a good call. If you get fed, I like to buy them. If I'm not fed, I like to buy them. I just obviously, I only buy 3 if I'm really fed and I know I don't need other items. And I almost always buy 2. Like, I'm a tanky jungle player. And most of the tanky jungles synergize really well with GP10s early.
Right, especially when they build into like Shiralias or even like a Randuin's, like Mundo built into Randuin's pretty much always.
Yeah. Also, another plus with GP10s is you get a lot more opportunities to gank because you're still going to be making that income. You're not going to be losing a whole lot of money just because you're spending the time to gank your lanes. So I feel like ganking's more justified.
Okay, and I actually want to talk about this a little bit because I think it's really important. I don't think we've actually had anyone on the show before that did this for their team. Is from what I understand, you are actually pretty much the caller for your team. You kind of decide what happens. Can you kind of explain what that pretty much entails and what you kind of do?
Yeah, sure. It means basically, well, I split the duties with our mid probably, and then in team fights, one of us will make a call and everyone follows basically without saying anything. But it basically entails we see if we need to drop out of a fight, cut our losses and get the rest of the people out so that they can't force a big objective like a Baron or a Dragon, or if we need to continue. Obviously, we call out kill targets, so we always if you can kill this person, get to that person. Obviously, if you can't get to that person, ignore the call and keep yourself alive. But it's a pretty hectic responsibility when you play AoE comps or things where a lot of stuff happens in the team fight.
Well, not to mention like the blame will get put on the caller if it's a bad call kind of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I don't have to worry about that. My calls are perfect.
You do everything correctly.
Yeah, the first time.
All right. Well, where do you see Legion going? These next couple of months. We have season 2 championships coming up in September, I believe. We have IPL 5 coming up, and I think around August. We also have the Curse Invitationals, which is going on right now. I feel like I'm missing something else.
MLG.
Oh yeah, MLG is coming up as well in June, I believe. Actually, first week of June.
June 8th. Yeah, we're going to that. So I happen to know that one off the top of my head. All those things sound like we're definitely going to try and get into all those things. And in the past, we've kind of had like bad connectivity problems. Like for the Kiev qualifier, I DC'd against Epic when we were up like 10 kills or something, and we lost. So, I mean, in the past, we've had bad luck on top of, not having a solid team composition. But we've been playing with the same team, so, I mean, I would expect us to compete heavily for spots in those major tournaments. I'm not going to be so bold as to say, we're going to make it for sure, but I definitely feel like we should.
Well, what about season 3? Ooh, that's my bad chair. What about season 3? Because I know a lot of teams, well, a couple of teams, certain ones, are actually having a complete roster change. Are we going to see all of Legion still together in season 3?
Ideally, I mean, if Cruiser can stop feeding, we'll have to keep him on. But
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, are you guys going to plan on kicking him off? Because that's something I would totally do.
yeah, that's the next plan, is to tactfully do that, you know. Or maybe not so tactfully, we just won't tell him.
We could do it here if you want. I mean, you could just tell him right now. I'm going to make sure he watches the episode.
I mean, we'll have at least one person watching that way. And
Thanks.
And with how... I just meant, you know, you get a lot of viewers when other people, but, you know, the person who plays the tank jungles, who's going to watch that?
All the women are going to watch it. So yeah, Legion Season 3, so hopefully you'll still be around for that. You all still plan on competing and trying to get your name on even more than you already have. Because I know in these past couple months you guys have really come... Whoa. That's something breaks in the background. You guys have come into your own lately. And I think we can go ahead and end the episode there. We've actually gone on past where we wanted to show for this one, where you guys pretty much just dominated the game. In those first 8 minutes, you pretty much just won it. I mean, the enemy team kind of gave up, but is there anything you want to say before we actually kind of, you know, go out here? Any shout-outs or anything?
Eat more beef. That was my cow call out.
That was lame. I'm just going to say that.
I'm going to use it more often. What was that? Mod, what was that thing I used to call when I played Alistar? I can't remember. Anyway, you can follow us, my team, Team Legion on Facebook, or at Lautemortis if you want to follow me on Twitter. I don't have a lot of social media. But if you want me to, I can start up some e-drama, because I know Reddit loves e-drama. So, you know, if you need me to stage a tournament and then kick people out, I can do it.
We might be able to do something like that, actually. But that was for another time. As I believe, actually, the surrender's coming. I don't know, you guys are all flashing for no reason. But, yeah, everyone make sure to check out Legion. They definitely have been doing really well lately. I mean, they beat Dignitas in the Curse Invitationals and are playing against TSM. Well, not exactly sure when, but coming up soon. Oh, Tuesday.
5 PST.
Okay, well, I actually may potentially be casting. I don't know what's happening exactly. But, yeah, make sure to check them out. I've seen Nilly Spear come in, and thank you again for doing the episode. And for everyone else, you know, please like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
But I love you.